Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Velocity channel. Listen, you already know it's going to be on like Donkey Kong because we have the man when you're talking about first lien HELOCs and much, much more, but we're talking about first lien HELOCs right now. Okay. We're talking about velocity banking. We're talking about taking your velocity banking to the next level with first lien HELOCs, right? And so, who better to get on the program than, and you already know, the Michael Lush. Now, listen, before we get into what we're going to be talking about, I want you to like, share, subscribe, hit that little notification bell so that
Ding,
you
ding, ding.
don't miss anything, right? That we are offering, that we are showing you, that we are teaching you, that we are training you how to get out of that traditional banking method that you grew up in and into a velocity banking method, into a banking method that actually puts more money into your wallets instead of their wallets. And you probably already know who I'm talking about when I mention there. All right. How many of you want to keep on the bank's plan? Right? You want to stay on the bank's plan? No, 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 you don't. And so we're going to show you how to get off the bank's plan through the first lien HELOC. It's going to show you what it is. And basically, Michael, you're going to tell them whatever they need to know, whatever the first lien HELOC is about, whatever you feel they need to know. All right. When it comes to first lien HELOCs. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Lush, please take it away.
That is a good introduction. Have you DJ'd before?
No, no.
I right after college, I was a bouncer at local bars to my college town, and
Yeah,
you'd always be good friends with the DJ, right?
yeah.
And you always had to watch out for the DJ's back because everybody's clawing at him, and that kind of sent chills up my spine. I was like, I remember those days. I'm glad they're a little behind me though, but I
Yeah,
remember those days. So thanks for the
nice.
introduction. Now, I'll kind of give a brief history lesson, not just on myself, but also the banking industry. So, as far as myself, I was brought into this industry. It was the first gig I had right out of college. So, I graduated college in 2001 and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was a basketball player and I had heart failure my junior year. I was able to kind of come back from heart failure and still play, but just not at the same level. So the hopes and dreams of playing professionally, not in the NBA, I kind of knew as soon as I got to college that all right, NBA is probably not going to be my thing, but overseas could definitely be my thing. So right after college, I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do. My whole dream was to play basketball. And now it's like, what in the world am I going to do? So I had a buddy that graduated a year ahead of me, and he was at a mortgage company and came over and said, hey, I think you would be really good at this. They're hiring right now. Would you like to come work at this mortgage company? I think I can get you an interview. I said no. And he said, man, I think you would be good at it. And I was like, well, what are people making? And he showed me a flyer that they had in the office of some of the top producers in the office of what they were making. And it was like 36,000, 27,000, 20,000. I'm like, oh, sign me up. I don't know what a mortgage is, but I'll figure it out. So I did. I was thrust right into it. It was the first gig right out of college, was getting into the mortgage business. And it lasted. It was a good run. Everybody hears about the subprime days. We were the ninth largest lender in the country at the time. So we were doing well. And in fact, there was a couple times we got some calls from the CEO like, hey, less than 1% of our paper is this. I think you guys were really missing the boat on some serious volume because you're not doing stated loans. You're not doing no income check or bank statement loans. It was just harder to sell, to be honest with you, because of the pricing. So we didn't. But long story short, did really well. Rose through the ranks pretty quickly. Ended up being a senior manager for that company and managing a pretty decent size loan officer group. And it was on my birthday, December 17th of 2007, the company filed bankruptcy. Knew it was coming. We knew it was coming in August because July, we had done about 460 units for our office. And then by September, we were doing about 50. Now, bankruptcy only lasted about 9 months because that company resurrected, and I had taken that as an opportunity to move back to Nashville, my hometown. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time, working for this company, and they had an office here, and they knew that I was from here, so they called me up and said, "Hey, we are resurrecting. We got money from a hedge fund, and we're going to get the gang back together again, and under a new umbrella, a new name, and we're going to do government paper. And do you want to come on board as our director of operations?" I said, "Absolutely. I'm sitting on the sidelines for 9 months, basically spending my 401k. So yeah, anything's better than just sitting on the sidelines." And I wasn't truly just sitting on my hands. I was laying tile for a buddy of mine who had a tile company, anything I could do. This was really tough financial period for me. And so we got money from a hedge fund, and it was in 2009. So about a year into this, the hedge fund manager was located in Connecticut, and he would fly to Nashville to visit his parents. But while he was coming in to fly into Nashville, he would spend some time to come by the office and mentor me and really check up on his money, right? Make sure it's being spent right, make sure I'm getting a rate of return. And it was one of these visits where I said, all right, this guy's worth hundreds of millions of dollars at the time. Now he's a billionaire. I would like to get in his sphere of influence. So I hit him with it and I said, listen, what I do, I do really well. If you could introduce me to your circle of influence, if they're doing mortgages, they're probably big mortgages or big paychecks, big commissions, a lot of profit. You get your money back faster, and I help service your friends. And he said, I appreciate what you do. He said, I'll be honest with you, I don't know any of my business associates and friends that do mortgages. I was like, yeah, I kind of figured that. You guys pay cash for everything. He goes, no, we don't pay cash. He said, for crying out loud, I'm managing partner of a hedge fund. He said, we are the kings of using other people's money. And he said, no, we still use bank money, but we just don't use mortgages. We use simple interest lines of credit, like, for instance, a home equity line of credit. And this is what he hit me with. He said, be honest with you, Michael, mortgages are financial crack to middle America. The poor can't afford them and the rich don't use them. I knew the whole poor part because I couldn't get poor people qualified for mortgages, right? Now you've got Dodd-Frank, you've got to have ability to repay. It's the days of fogging up a mirror and getting a loan were long gone. So I need pay stubs, W-2s. You can't be poor to get a mortgage. So I knew that. But what I really focused on was the rich don't use them and you still use other people's money. So what do you do? And that's when he was telling me about home equity lines of credit. And he said, it's just a far more efficient way to pay off your home for the right people. Not everyone can or should attempt this. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, which unfortunately most Americans are, then this isn't right for you. You should stay on your mortgage. And quite frankly, you still got homework to do. You need to get right with your budget and right with your discipline to kind of get things in line. But for the people that have mastered their budget and have what we call cash flow positivity, where more money's coming in than what's going out, then a home equity line of credit is just a far more efficient way to financing real estate. And, again, he told me that I was a financial dope dealer. I was doling out financial crack to middle America. So that didn't sit well with me. So I spent a year honestly trying to disprove this and thought if I could figure out little genius holes where a mortgage would prove out better than what he was telling me, then I can earn his respect, right? And the more I went down that rabbit hole, the more I proved him right. He was 100% right. If you're cash flow positive, I just couldn't prove it out math wise. And not just myself, hired a CPA, actuary, and then my business partner today, Matt Workman, who, I even threw it at him. It's like, dude, audit this. See if we can poke holes in this where we can prove this to be inferior to what we do as a living. Because he was also with me in the subprime days and then moved on to a big box bank and was killing it over there. So, it really upset the apple cart. It made us sick to our stomach that here we are in our personal lives. Now we're moving on to consume home equity lines of credit in our personal life, but yet we're on the phone with these clients and getting referrals from real estate agents, CPAs, financial planners saying, yeah, here's a mortgage over here, puts food on the table. But in our personal lives, we're not actually doing that. So let's fast forward. That was in 2009. In about 2012, 2013, I was pretty close to paying off my home by utilizing the strategy. And I was being interviewed by a magazine. I don't know if it was a podcast at the time. It was a marketing mentor that kind of put something together as far as an interview and was going to slap it into a magazine or a podcast. And it was about originators growing branches, right? Building branches and kind of building your independent empire in the mortgage community. And it was about an hour-long interview. 45 minutes of it was him asking me questions. This is how I grow up. This is how I recruit. These are systems and processes I put in place from an operational standpoint to kind of make things easier to scale and have all those foundations in place so you can scale and hire and get processors, underwriters, closers, funders, et cetera. And it was very monotonous. And then he hit me with a question that was not self-serving at all. And it was one that I, in a split second, I just made a decision like, man, this is really going to shoot myself in the foot. But the question was, is there anything new under the sun in the mortgage industry that nobody knows about? And obviously top of mind is what I'm doing in my own life. And, I've told my friends and family, like, listen, don't call me for a mortgage. This is what you should do. And here I am kind of being disingenuous if I don't share this, right? And it just kind of ate at me. So I said, screw it. I'll just say it. I said, I don't consume mortgages. Haven't in years and probably never will. And I said, here's what I do in my own personal life. And that took 15 minutes to explain it. So he called me after this interview and said, man, I'm kind of blown away about a couple things. One, the first 45 minutes was completely boring. I honestly, I think when I posted, I just need to tell people to just fast forward for the 45 minutes and only listen to the second 15 minutes because your energy level was entirely different. Your energy level is different because your passion for what you actually do in your own life was far superior than what you're doing in your professional life. And he said, I think you need to turn that into a business. So I did. Within 90 days of starting the business, I completely abandoned the mortgage industry, and that was in 2013. And we started what at first was called Replace Your Mortgage, still is called Replace Your Mortgage, but now it's an entire university on a myriad of financial topics. But I want to talk about HELOCs and really the history, since I've talked about the history of myself. Obviously, I led with myself first, right? So it kind of tells you where my priorities are. I like talking about myself. But let's go back to the history lesson in the banking industry, because that's also where that year of investigating this, that's what it did. I'm a history buff, and I just went back in time and kind of looked at what people were doing financially. And we've probably heard our grandfathers, great grandfathers, hey, back in my day when we bought a house, we paid it off in 10 years. There's a couple of reasons for it. One, I think it was just a better generation. They didn't have as much distractions. They had more education than we did. Entertainment for them was reading books, not watching TV, Netflix, TikTok, etc. So I think it was a better generation, but they also had better banking tools. So a mortgage prior to 1913 looked almost identical to what you would see as a home equity line of credit today. Money could move in and out freely 24/7. So we think of mortgages because it's an old word. It's old French for death pledge. It's been around for as long as anyone can remember. But the way it worked was entirely different than 1913. Let's say I had a farm prior to 1913, and I'll explain what 1913 is all about. But prior to 1913, if I had a farm worth $200,000 and I owed $100,000 on it, I could walk to the bank today and say, hey, I need $10,000 and I need to buy farm equipment. And what's going to help me do is I'm going to cultivate more crop. And then when I turn around and sell that crop for $20,000, I'm going to come back and give you $20,000. So right there, they give you $10,000. They change your deed and to $110,000 balance. When you got your 20, guess where the 20 went right back to the mortgage. Now you owe 90, right? So that was where a lot of that generation was storing a lot of their cash and assets was in a mortgage, because when they needed access to it, they could get access to their equity freely. Now let's fast forward to today. That's what a home equity line of credit is. Money moves in freely and it moves out freely 24/7. A mortgage, it only moves in freely. Imagine that. It's payday for the lenders, right? Hey, we'll let you bring it in freely, but when it's time to actually give it to you, then we're going to charge you thousands of dollars in closing costs, origination fees, discount points, appraisal fees, underwriting fees, processing fees, and it's also going to take 30 or 45 days to get access to your cash. And oh, by the way, when you do want access to your equity, you're going to have to tell us on the front end exactly how much you're wanting, because we're not giving you a line of credit. And then once we give it to you, you're going to pay interest on the full amount until it's completely paid off in 30 years. If you paid off in 30 years, because if we have another series like we did in 2020 or COVID and interest rates drop, guess what everybody's going to do? They're going to turn around and refinance and start that amortization schedule all over again. But what happened in 1913? It changed the banking industry forever. The Federal Reserve. So that's when the Federal Reserve was created. and not the first iteration, that was the final iteration of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve gives banks a very unique ability, which is called fractional reserve lending. So really, they're the backstop of banks. So instead of a bank having to have all this cash on hand, they can have a fraction of the cash on hand and lend out 10 times what they have. So if you deposit $1, they have $10 to lend out. If you deposit 100 grand, they have $1 million to lend out. So after 1913, the banks got together and said, this is a pretty powerful magic trick. So how can we get more deposits? And they started looking at how the average American, what they were doing with their cash. And they were depositing into their mortgage for safekeeping because it was some semi-liquid. They could go down to the bank and get however much cash they wanted without fees and adjust the deed and just continue that way. So they said, well, here's what we need to do. We need to make a mortgage, a 30-year mortgage. So longer time period, more interest, harder to pay off. But we also need to make it a closed end. That was the main focus. It wasn't the interest that they were after. They are. Obviously, if there's a byproduct and there's a cherry on top, they're there to play that game too. But the main focus was to have segregation of income. So by making a mortgage instead of an open-end tool where money can move in and out freely, they made it a closed-end product where money can go in easily but not come out easily. Now think about what that does at the consumer level. You know, when it's time to pay our mortgage, maybe some of us pay extra on the mortgage, but let's be honest, 97% of Americans do not pay extra on the mortgage. And why is that? It's a scary thought. It's scary because, yes, you're paying down the principal, but you don't have free access to the equity anytime you need it, whether it's times of surviving or it's times of thriving.
Wow.
So loan officers don't get compensated for doing HELOCs, right? Now, I say that, let me put a caveat on there. Like, for instance, when I was the senior vice president for a federal bank, we had a program where we brokered out to a bank. It was a terrible HELOC, but we did. So basically, now, if you wanted to do a HELOC, you're doing 2 loans. And this is kind of towards the tail end of my mortgage industry. What I did was I just built a relationship with a local bank and just said, hey, I'm going to send all my HELOCs to you, and I'll do the mortgage over here, and you do a second lien behind it, and let's do a chunking strategy like what you teach with Velocity Banking. But the compensation to me for doing that second loan was $250. Now, on the first loan, you're making $4 and $5 grand for the same paperwork. And over here, I'm going to make 250 grand. My time is more valuable than the money. So instead of me doubling my efforts and having to do 2 loans, I just said, I'm going to do this one. And I'm going to pawn it off on a banker, and you meet me at the closing table. So loan officers don't get compensated adequately for home equity lines of credit, and they don't even have it in-house. They have to broker it to somebody else, which means you're paying an extra fee because you got a lot of hands in the cookie jars. If the bank's got to get paid, the loan officer's got to get paid, and the lender also wants to get paid for brokering it, well, what do you think the fees are going to do? That's where profits come from. That's where commissions come from. Commissions come from profits. Profits come from consumers overspending. So why don't we just follow the product that has less profits? That would be a home equity line of credit. So lenders don't have a home equity line of credit. Now, here's the worst part. Bankers are stupid. Now, I hope I didn't complicate that and make it, seem more complicated than it was, but I just want to speak simply. Bankers are stupid. And what I mean by that is bankers are generalists. Loan officers are specialists. If you go to a loan officer and your DTI is too high or LTV won't fit, down payment, gift funds, all this stuff, they don't get paid unless you close, which forces that loan officer to start getting innovative and creative to figure out, all right, how do we get this debt ratio in line? How do we take this square peg and fit it through this round hole? Because if you don't close and fund, I don't get a commission check. Bankers are paid a salary. So, and they're generalists. When you go into the bank, even bank managers, you go into the bank and say, hey, I'd like to open up a checking account. They can help you with that. I'd like to open up a savings account. They can help with that. CD, money market, insurance products, credit card, whatever. They can help you with that. I need to wire money. I need a HELOC. Yeah, I can help you with that. They get a salary. Now, some of the banks have a point system where if you open up X amount of checking accounts, savings accounts, HELOCs, et cetera, then you get X amount of points, and we'll give you a bonus at the end of the year. Not a big one. It's like 5 to 10% of what their salary is. But nonetheless, they aren't impacted whether you close or not. In every single bank, and let me emphasize the word every. I have a team, this is all they do. We'll research a bank online, and then my team will call that bank and investigate them. It usually takes, on average, 4 individuals at that bank. We have to escalate at 4 different levels so that we get to somebody that understands what we're talking about. I mean, think about it. You walk into the typical bank, your local bank, and say, hey, I'd like to get a first lien position home equity line of credit on a promo rate that I'm going to end up eventually stacking over the next several years to keep my interest rate low so I don't have to pay ungodly interest rates that I'm paying now. And what I'm going to do is utilize an offset account, maybe through you, maybe somewhere else where I get a business line of credit 0% to speed up this process. And I'm also going to use it as a operating account. So all my income is no longer going to go in your checking account. It's going to go into my home equity line of credit, suppressing the balance, thus suppressing the principal, thus suppressing the amount of interest I pay. Where do I sign up? That banker's going to be like, what the hell just happened? They ain't got a clue. So I'll go
Right.
back to it's the Wild West out there when it comes to banking. And it's not just getting a tool. So if you're a carpenter, I'm not a carpenter. Bad analogy because I actually do know how to use a skill saw, but you take a skill saw, give it to a carpenter that builds you a house. Give it to a 5-year-old, cut his leg off. Same thing with guns or anything else. It's a tool. That's all it is. You need to know how to, for lack of better words, manipulate it and play the banking game. And that's what you and I both do.
Wow. Listen, man, I could be here all day, but man, I respect your time and we will hopefully, right? If you can make the time, sir, we will be back again discussing, oh man, discussing first lien HELOCs. I mean, I'm just blown away, man. It's amazing. And I'm sure the people will have questions. Man, I'll run them by you. We'll talk again soon. We want to make sure that everyone knows, listen, because since they have questions, they need some answers. And so where can they go to know more about the first lien HELOCs, to know more about what you do, to know more about that time and balance? If they have those questions along those lines, where can they go, man?
Yeah, we have tons of free content. So I'm not even sending you to a place where you actually have to spend money.
Okay.
So if you go to Replace Your University, in there's a myriad of different things that we teach, but the first thing that's going to pop up is Replace Your Mortgage. You click on that, register your name and email because we do want to know who you are. We want to get that data, to be honest with you. We're going to resolicit to you as well. I'm just being completely transparent and honest with you. But once you register for that site and you go into Replace Your Mortgage, there's going to be beginner and intermediate, 100% free. You don't have to pay a single penny to go through the foundational aspects of this. Now, if you really want to get ninja with it and take it to the next level, then we have to do a consultation. This isn't for everybody. I've got a buddy in the banking industry that says, Michael, this is a lot like yoga pants. Everybody can wear them, but not everybody should. And that's so true with the HELOC industry. It's not a one size fits all. It's something that we have to take a look at it. So you can't become a client of ours by accident. There's nowhere on our website where you click a button to pay us for our consultation. The consultation is free. So we need to look at your numbers and see if it makes sense. And here's the good thing. Every consultation we do, somebody walks away with value. Because even if you're not yet a good fit, we're going to pinpoint exactly why you're not a good fit and give you some homework. Nobody likes that word homework, but sometimes we have to do it. Go back, reassess things 6 months later, holler back at us. If you've done these action items, you're going to be in a much better position. And then maybe we'll bring you on as a client.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Listen, as well as clicking on what we got here in the description link below, folks, you know how to get a hold of me. You know how to schedule a call with me. Let me know. I want to steer you in the correct direction, right, for you. And that is off of the bank's plan, right? Skank of America and those off of that plan and into a plan that is better for you, not them. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time out, man. I appreciate you. We're going to have you back. Folks, again, like, share, and subscribe so that everyone can know about this. How many people know about that? How many of you knew about that? See, that's why you got to like, share, and subscribe. God bless, and you guys have a good one.